A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to each and every one of you, depending on where you're located. My name is Chris Parker, and I lead our alliance relationship with Microsoft here at Virtusa, and will be your host for today's session. Today's Fireside Chat is titled, Equity Won't Happen Unless We Engineer It, and it is a chance to hear from high-profile female tech leaders who will be sharing their experiences and learnings on navigating the gap in equity and succeeding in an ever-evolving landscape. Our goal today is to raise awareness for the shortage of women role models in tech as a major barrier that continues to impact future generations. We will lean into the embrace equity conversation to emphasize equity isn't a nice to have, it's a must to have, with a strong focus on gender equity needs being a part of every society's DNA. We have gathered a fantastic group of panelists to share their learnings on navigating the equity gap, leading at every level of your career, and sharing valuable insights to tackle challenges and achieve success. Before I introduce our esteemed panelists and hand over the session to them, I'll quickly go over a few housekeeping items. First, this is a 1-hour session, which will include a Q&A portion. Second, if you have any questions throughout the event, please comment where you are viewing this, and our panelists will address them towards the end of the Fireside Chat. With those housekeeping items taken care of, it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists. First up, we will have Elsa Burns. She is the Senior Vice President of Recruitment Services and Operations, where she is responsible for leading the Virtusa talent acquisition team and connecting diverse talent with entry-level careers in technology. She's passionate about providing individuals of all backgrounds with the opportunity to launch successful careers, especially as it relates to closing the technology skills gap. Also joining us, we have Stacy Dumas. She's a Global Partner Development Senior Leader at AWS. She was a CIO for 15 years, driving digital transformation and business-driven technology optimization. She leveraged these skills as a professor within the University of Colorado and expanded her skills by becoming a certified data scientist. We also have Donna Sullivan-Peck. She is the Global Strategic Alliance Director at Pega. She's an insightful, results-driven sales leader with success directing a broad range of corporate initiatives, including strategic planning, enablement readiness, consultative sales analysis, and implementation of transformational services to support client business objectives. She enjoys mentoring and is passionate about assisting other women excel in the technology industry. We will also be joined by our very own Darshana Pai. She is the SVP of Software Development, Strategy, and Governance here at Virtusa. She's a business leader and technologist with over 30 years of experience in leading transformational solutions for global customers in banking, financial services, and healthcare industries, helping CIOs and CTOs to provide visibility into business value flow through productive-centric delivery and platforms. We are so excited to have all of these amazing women joining us today. Now let's dive in. Setting the context for today's discussion, I wanted to start by sharing some truths. Women make up 50% of the world's population, and yet only 27% of tech workers in the US, only 31% of tech workers in the UK, and 34% of the IT workforce in India are women. And if you look deeper within the tech sector, women account for only 15% of roles in engineering. In fact, the gender gap for women in technology as a whole is actually worse today than it was in 1984. We also know that a major barrier to women pursuing a career in technology is a shortage of women role models and a lack of understanding of how technology can enable women to change the world. Additionally, while women entering the tech field as entry level has the highest gender ratio, The gap continues to widen the higher you go into a leadership position as a female. With the right support, sponsorship, and mentorship, many of the challenges women face in technology fields can be overcome. Let's get to know our panelists. Darshana, over to you first. Can you give us a brief overview of your career and what inspired you to go into engineering?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, and very happy International Women's Day. So, Chris, I will have to go back, in 1980s, where I had to make a very important decision in my life, whether I take engineering as my career or I go into the fine arts, because those were the subjects I had developed interest over the time. And um, in Mumbai, city of Mumbai in India at that time, there was no social media. There's no exposure to information as much as what we have today, and you will get influenced by the social circle around you. And at that time, engineering and medicine were considered as top two professions in India. And women would go primarily to medicine and men would go to engineering. So that was the trend. And it all depends on how much score you will get in your 12th grade. Depending on that, you will decide. And when I decided I want to go to fine arts, JJ School of Art, which is a very well-known school in Mumbai, everybody brainwashed me at that time that when you're scoring the highest grades in physics, chemistry, and maths, you have no right to go to fine arts. So that was the incident I still remember very fresh in my mind. But I said fine, I like both the subjects. I had no interest really in medicine and biology as subjects. And so I decided fine, if not the top one, let me choose the second best dream career for me, and that was engineering. I always liked physics and maths subjects, so that's how I started my engineering. After finishing engineering, I always wanted to be in software, into information technology. That's the career at that time, and I did have interest too. So that's how I started my journey in information technology 30 years now. And I have kind of done every role one can think of in software services industry, right from software engineer, architect, designer, project manager, delivery. So you name the role and I have kind of done. And that gives me a very good insight into, deep diving in the subject, at the same time keeping a very broad long-term picture in my mind. And a couple of years, the 10 years of my career, I was doing those roles. And after that, I switched to the leadership roles, primarily in the solution delivery. And so the industry verticals I was working for always have been either banking and financial services or healthcare. That's where I developed that expertise from the industry point of view. And I always was there for the large organization initiatives. At the same time, when there were programs and projects in crisis, everybody remembered me as somebody who will come and revive the programs. And that's how I climbed the corporate ladder, and currently doing the delivery excellence and delivery strategy role at Virtusa.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Darshana. Elsa, how about you? Can you give us a brief overview of your career and what inspired you to join a tech company?
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone, and happy National Women's Month. I'd have to go back about 20 years. I was like many, graduated and not very sure what to do with my business degree at the time. Landed in a sales role and always had a passion for education. I started out, my educational path was to pursue an education degree. And my junior year, I was convinced to pursue business. So very confused, not sure what I really wanted to do or land in. I by mistake, took a recruiter position working for an education tech company at the time, where we partnered with private and public institutions to stand up degree programs online for non-traditional students. And the way that was empowered was through technology. And it was in that role at that moment that it clicked for me. I began to really understand that technology can create pathways for those that have barriers and life gets in the way and they can't take that traditional path. And there was what sparked my fire and interest to continue to stay in technology. I stayed there for 11 plus years. Grew in my career overseeing the recruitment function, and I loved that function because I was touching lives and got to engage with different individuals from different backgrounds that really were looking for ways to succeed and could not take the time to sit and go to campus and sit in a classroom. And technology empowered us to pave the way to be able to do that online. And I've stayed close to that mission and have only pursued organizations that do just that, really focus on talent, people, and creating those unique pathways. It's what inspired me and continues to inspire me today.
Awesome. That is so great. We have that in common, where I also started my career in education and didn't know where that was going to take me. So very happy to have you on the panel. Stacy, over to you. Tell us your story. What inspired you to go into engineering and become a certified data scientist?
So as a child, I always wanted to understand how things worked. I was always taking things apart and trying to figure that out. And so I ended up going to an engineering school in California, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and mostly because it's right on the beach, and moved into, when I graduated, I moved into technology because I was hired at Lockheed Martin. And again, like you, I did project management. I did all sorts of other things. But because of my success and because I went really broad in my understanding and in volunteering throughout Lockheed Martin, they actually asked me to take over an SAP implementation that was failing. Boy, was that a learning experience. But I found my passion. Which was applying everything that I had learned and becoming a technology leader. And so I moved to a retail company and I became the CIO. And was a CIO for about 15 years. And what happened was I had to report to the board of directors on a quarterly basis about the business, about IT, about what was going on. But they always asked the same question. Okay, great. What are we going to do about it? I don't have that data. I mean, that data is really not available in just a traditional BI tool set. Later, I left and did consulting work. And I was working for Jackson Memorial Hospital, which is a state-funded hospital that serves people under the poverty line throughout Miami. And I was meeting with the chief medical officer, who's a woman, by the way, and she said, I have got to figure out why some people are readmitted and some people are not. And this is happening within 30 days. One, we don't get paid from the state if they're readmitted. Two, the patient health was really suffering. And so she had been traditionally doing what I had done as a CIO. Let's go look at the medical data. And what she found is, oh yeah, most of these people have comorbidity. So they come in with cardiac arrest and they actually have diabetes as well. That's the problem, right? And what we found was we brought in a data scientist. I was not one at that time. They did the analysis of the entire data around the patient and found that no, that wasn't it. It was that their primary language was Spanish, and they lived more than 7 miles from the hospital and had no car. These are people who are living under the poverty line. And so therefore, they were not getting their medications, and they were not doing their follow-up health visits. She immediately changed the protocol, and now each one of those people with those factors gets a virtual healthcare provider that speaks Spanish as their primary language. And she reduced the readmittance by more than 50%. I fell in love. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden it all comes together and we can solve all of the truly thorny problems in the world. And I fell in love with the magic. And I found a program in North Carolina State that offers this program, by the way, highly recommend it to anyone, and took that program so I could fulfill my dream.
That's awesome. It's always good to see data in action and how technology can really change the lives of the communities in which we work. So that's great, Stacey. Donna, over to you. What encouraged you to forge a path in the tech industry?
Well, thank you, Chris. And again, happy International Women's Day to all of the listeners and viewers here today. My path was a little bit different, certainly than Darshana's and Elsa's, and Stacey's. That I was basically doing some work for a marketing firm as a director, very, very part-time for a few years once my children were well into school. And I was running a lot of their lives, quite frankly, as more of a stay-at-home mom, head of the auctions, people's campaigns that were running in town, did the whole bridge golf tennis thing, and, thought I had a very full life and doing a lot of volunteer work. And I had a couple of friends point out to me, you work really hard and you're busy all week, but you don't collect a paycheck. And I said, I understand, but these are my choices. Well, as life went on and my kids started to grow older and one entered college and the other one was soon to follow, I realized, wow, so much of my world has been built around theirs. What am I going to do? And I had friends whose husbands mostly were in sales careers, leadership in technology primarily. And they would say to me occasionally, now, you, when you're ready, you should come talk to us about sales. And I thought, sales? What do I know about sales? And they said, don't you realize you've been asking for the order in everything you've done all this time? And I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I was asking people for money, for large donations or for people's campaigns, that kind of thing. So long story short, I did eventually apply to a major technology company at the time, EMC, now owned by Dell. And I, had a leg up in terms of going in for the interviews, but I was told, it's on you to get the job and to, of course, keep the job. We can just open the door to help you get in. So I did have that, considering I started my career in technology quite late in life. And I was very happy to at least have an entree. I didn't have a passion for technology, I'll be honest with you. I had worked in television before I got married, and I really was very new to the whole scene. So not only did I learn the technology at EMC because they had an amazing training program, I think number 2 in the world to Deloitte, I think at the time, I had to also learn the technology to do the job and all the computer skills. I remember getting a calendar invitation and someone said, didn't you see the agenda in the calendar invitation? I said, no, I got the calendar invitation. I accepted it. They said, no, there's stuff in it. So, I learned the EMC technology and my own technology to do my job at the same time. A little complicated. Anyway, I went into sales. I quickly ascended into an alliance role with Dell, managing Dell in Canada about a year and a half later. Did stay there for several years and really launched my career with alliances and partnerships, which I love. So while I work in the tech industry, I very much have a sales-oriented role. I don't sell the technology specifically, but I do sell our company to my partner, who in my case now is a big global SI. Very happy and pleased to have been working with them now for 6 years. And I actually have had 3 stops along the way since I began my career, each, at least 5 years. And I'm very happy that I've landed in a place where my career has grown. I have advocated for myself. It was scary what I didn't know when I started. And sometimes that's a good thing because I just kept learning as I went. And if I didn't understand something, I, sought help. I wasn't afraid to ask. I did do a little covering up from time to time. And I was encouraged by one of my friend's husbands who runs a major insurance carrier globally that, I said, I feel like, I hate to say this because women hear it all the time, the imposter syndrome. I didn't know the word at the time. I just said, I sell myself into these jobs and I'm not sure I can actually do them. And he said to me something I have never forgotten. He said, Donna, what do you think men do? We don't all have the skill sets for the jobs and promotions we go after. We actually figure it out along the way, and you will too. So ask for help, do your homework, be a student of the technology and of the industry that you're working in, and it'll all come to you. You'll do the right thing because you know how to forge ahead. And I'm telling you, that's the best advice I have ever received. And to know the secret that very successful men also didn't necessarily know everything about what they were walking into really gave me a lot of sense of peace. And I think it should for all women. We do suffer from this syndrome seemingly more than men, or at least we talk about it and they don't, but they have it too. So it's not something that we can't overcome. You just have to believe in yourself.
And I think, Donna, your path is a super interesting one. And I think it's important for women to hear that. You stay home, you raise your kids, but you are still building very valuable skills that you can take into the workforce when and if you're ready to do so. So very, very awesome to hear that from you, and to hear the tidbit about, men fake it until they make it just as much as women do, right? And I think that's something that we don't hear enough of. So thank you so much for sharing that. And to all our panelists, thank you so much for providing that insight into your backgrounds and setting the stage for the rest of our discussion. It is so great to have such a powerful group of women who are donating your time with us this morning. So thank you again for that. Darshana, just a question for you. What role do you think women play in creating more equity in technology?
Yeah. So, Chris, the top three things which I have experienced, which really work in creating inclusive workplace and equity in technology, I'm going to share that. So the number one is depending on the role you are doing in the organization, and sometimes it does matter. But one has to be really very vocal, assertive about the inclusiveness at workplace, and also work with HR teams and your colleagues to practical sessions on that. And I have seen many times the awareness itself is not there, so you don't know that one has to focus on this subject. So that is first thing I would say, that talk about it, create that awareness about inclusiveness and equity. The second thing I would say is mentorship and coaching, and even the sponsorship. And I always feel that there's a subtle difference between mentorship, coaching, and sponsorship. So as much as one can offer these three roles other than your primary responsibility, I think that would really go a long way. And let me just call out that subtle difference which I was talking about, right? So coach is somebody who will make you think about the problems which you have in mind and get the solution from you. So he's not going to give you a solution, but make you think and find out the solution. The mentor is the one who is there in your own industry, so has wider exposure to what opportunities and possibilities lie in front of you that coach may not necessarily able to help you on that front. And the last is a sponsor who will create opportunities for you. So I think these three roles women have to play in whatever capacity they can at the workplace. And the last thing, but the most important thing, is being collaborative and teamwork, fostering teamwork. And especially if you come across your colleagues who are not able to solve their problem, not being vocal, they are sharing few things with you in one-on-one conversation, but in a meeting, they are not able to open up. I think one should extend that helping hand to them. I think these are the things which I would suggest, or I would say that we as women in the tech industry have to offer apart from our primary roles.
That's awesome. So I hear, make sure you have the right coach, a sponsor, a mentor. And it sounds like when you're talking about teamwork, being an advocate for yourself and for other women. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Darshana. Elsa, one for you. What role should employers play in creating more equity in the industry?
Yeah, great question, Chris, and one I'm extremely passionate as the head of talent acquisition at Revature. Where all we're trying to do is forge pathways to close the technology gap, but also impact it from a diversity standpoint. So I would say the first and probably primary one role for employers to have is really taking a hard look at their hiring practices and have an intentionality around non-traditional hiring pathways. I mean, you shared some pretty powerful stats at the top of this around, the national stats of women and what it looks like in engineering specifically. And a lot of that starts with the education pathways that women are pursuing. It's not that strong for STEM in comparison to our male counterparts. And so I think reducing the traditional ways of looking at talent and really starting to assess on skills and aptitude and their ability to learn and meeting talent where they are. Women specifically have great qualities and attributes that contribute to technology space, effective communication, detail oriented for precision. And those are the things that we look for at Revature to decide whether we can skill you up and level you up. And we've done that for thousands of women. So taking a hard look at the hiring practices, being open-minded, employers, if they don't have great professional development opportunities to skill up, partnering with organizations that provide that, partnering with diverse organizations that are also trying to support and create pathways for others, and just really meeting talent where they are. We have a shortage in general in tech. We certainly have a shortage of female, and a lot of times that's because the talent is there and opportunities just not. So being open-minded to creating those pathways and really focusing on the aptitude versus the hard skills that they need day one, getting them there.
I think that ties into what Donna was saying, right? If you have a person with a non-traditional background coming in, they may have the skills, but they may not have, 15 years of tech experience. But in Donna's case, they know how to sell. They know how to get what they need from people. So I think that's enlightening to hear that that's something that Revature does when they're looking at talent. So that's awesome insight there. Stacy, one for you. What advice do you have for women who are looking to enter into STEM fields?
Join a tech company of some kind. I think we have this myth out there that you're either a hardcore engineer or you're working in IT. And there are so many young women that I speak to who say, I don't want to work in IT. My kids said, I will never do the job you do, Mom. They watched the hours that I worked and the stress around IT. And so, my advice is go join a tech company of some kind, but do it in an adjacent field. Join marketing, join sales, join some other area, and then find your passion. We have people that join AWS, they come in to do sales, and then what they do is they end up moving into sustainability and all of the things that we do about the earth and returning more water than we use. And so they move into that field, and then you have the ability to get whatever certifications that you need to actually be an engineer within that field. So even if you have come from a business background or a mom or a sales background, whatever, join a technology company, find something that you're passionate about, and then go very broad within that field. And what I mean by going broad is shadow people that are doing things. I came in sales, perhaps I move into sustainability because I really care about the earth. And then I start shadowing people that are doing that analysis that is most interesting to me. And only then getting that certificate or whatever certification I need to grow deeper. Because the data has shown that people are going to have 3 different careers in their lifetime. So continuously learn and build that continuum for your next job.
I love the idea of shadowing people who have the role that you want to take on. I think that definitely helps you with establishing a level of comfort and building an advocate for yourself, or potentially even a sponsor, right? If you're shadowing somebody and you're understanding what their role is and you're talking to them about it and what you can do with them, I think that's a great way to jump headfirst into a part of STEM that maybe you hadn't thought about before. Another question for you, Stacey, is there anything that you wish someone would have told you when you first started in technology, or something that you learned along the way that you're like, man, if I could go back and tell, myself 10 years ago this bit of advice, where would I be, right? So any of that you think has been instrumental for you?
Yeah, my dad told me when I graduated from college, the above, the go broad. Make sure that you're always learning and that you're going to the broadest place within your career. But what he didn't tell me is that every single one of us, as was so wonderfully pointed out here, do suffer from imposter syndrome, and women are less likely to ask for help. And so what I didn't learn until much later is you really have to build a diverse community around you, both internal to where you work, but also external to where you work, to help you, and that you have to be your authentic self and actually ask for that help throughout that. I'm incredibly fierce at work, but I'm actually a very shy person. And so asking for that help, going and saying, hey, please, can you be part of my community, is something that is hard for me. We have to do the uncomfortable to move ahead. We have to.
I think that's something that it resonates, right? A lot of times we don't want to ask those questions, or we don't want to take up that space because we're like, man, we're so underrepresented. Now here I am, working here and doing this, and I'm the woman that's here. I don't want to feel like I don't know. I don't want people to think that I don't have this. But there's nothing wrong with asking questions and trying to figure out and how to work together as a valuable team member when these things come up. Piggybacking on that conversation, Donna, what networking advice do you have for women who want to find that sponsor, another advocate, sit down and just really get a support system going where they are? Any advice that you have that's worked well for you?
Well, I agree with what Stacey had pointed out. It's both an external community as well as an internal at work community. It could be, for me, it was some of my friends' husbands who had amazing advice for me, and led me into a world that I really didn't know. Corporate America at the highest levels. It made me very comfortable in making sure that I was able to feel good about having conversations with C-level folks, because those were a lot of my friends. And in my own work, though, I really needed to make sure that I was bringing that to work, because that's who I deal with, in my job. So it has been very helpful to draw on my experience, as Stacey pointed out too, as a person in my personal life, raising children and whatever else I did. Those skill sets, absolutely, as you pointed out, Chris, transferred very well for me. I was a communications major in college, so no engineering or technology for me. It just so happens my son married a girl who is an engineer, and she's in technology. But that is, so we're very different, but we both work in the same field. And truth be told, we actually now work for the same company. So it's really a pleasure, but very, very different worlds. And I think that you have to engage in other kinds of networking that is available today. All the different groups, even within your own companies, there are groups that will, happily bring you in, and you can learn from other people in those groups. But also the networking of industry groups outside of work is also an area to look.
That is very true. I think there's so many different networks now. I feel like, on LinkedIn or on Facebook or any of the other groups, there's a chance for you to join a community or, join a networking event to kind of meet other women or to meet other people. So great advice there, Donna. Thank you so much. Darshana, from your experience, why do you think there are fewer women in STEM fields than men?
Okay. So, at least in Indian scenario, I have seen that the interest for women in the STEM field is almost same as what men would have, and they would, you know, go for careers in STEM and engineering. In fact, then if I see the numbers, I see almost 40 to 50% women in the engineering coming to technology organizations from the engineering colleges. But I think the real problem starts when it is around 7 to 8 years in the career, and they are on their family way. So they find it very hard to balance between the career and caregiving duties. So I think the problem really starts there, and so one of the solution Stacy talked about that is asking for help, and I have not seen many of them really go and ask for that help to balance between the career and the family responsibilities, and many tend to give up at that point, and that's where the ratio drops down to close to 20-25%, I would say, the entry level to mid management. So I think the key there is to really find your mentor, coach, guide, I would say, and at the same time ask for help. Find your support system, build your support system early in your career, and as you go further, right, leadership roles, that's where the number drops to a single digit, right?
Wow.
And there, I think the problem is slightly different. Those who make up to those 25% to mid management level, I think they find really difficult to climb up the ladder. And there it is more about, I have my experience is self limiting belief, one factor, right? There is a limiting belief. And the second thing is, there is this belief in your mind that as you move up, your responsibilities will increase, and you will find it difficult to do the work-life balance. So that's the main problem at that stage. So I would say that at different stage, why the number drops, there's a different reason. And if we really find solutions and reach out to those who have already solved the problem or figured out what options you have at that point in time, I think that would really help many of them to not stop but go more into the balancing act rather than saying I will do either this or that.
Very, very true and insightful. I think sometimes when we're thinking about women and roadblocks that we may come in as we're advancing our careers, that time management and getting that additional responsibility sounds like there's one that you've seen. Are there any other roadblocks that you feel, this is something that's preventing women from growing their career? Any roadblocks that come to mind?
Okay. So one I talked about is limiting belief, right? You are not convinced that you will be able to take up the next level role. And to tell you frankly, I think it is not just the woman problem. I have seen many men also having that limiting belief, but they don't talk about it a lot, I would say, and take that risk. So this risk-taking ability is something which I have seen as the roadblock as you move up the ladder. The second thing I would say is Donna talked about the sailing, right? The sales part of it. So I feel that whatever role you do, whether it is professional space or personal space, the sailing skill has to be developed by everybody, because every moment you are selling something, and that is something which I would tell that you have to develop those skills early in the life, and that's what will help. And that's one roadblock, that guidance, that how to develop certain skills like risk-taking ability, sailing. I think those are the roadblocks I see along the way.
Thank you so much. As we're nearing the end, just want to put a reminder to everyone that's in the audience today. If you have any questions that you want to ask our panelists, please put your questions into the chat on whatever platform you're joining us from, and we will try to address them all during our Q&A portion. With that, Elsa, do you have any tips to add that have helped you overcome your own inhibitions?
Yeah, everyone sort of touched on it, but I will reiterate help in community. Asking for help and that community piece is critical. My first experience kind of getting into leadership definitely took some nudging. And it was because I was trying to check every single box on the job description. You know, pointing out, I've never had P&L responsibility. There's no way I can apply for this, and that is a very true example. That was what I reacted to. If I didn't have the internal and external support community around me to kind of laugh at me, I was brave enough, and that was because I had trusted advisors that I could say, I don't think I could apply for this job because I can't do X. And it was that ability to be vulnerable with those trusted individuals in my community that nudged me and said, of course, why are you focused on that? Let's talk about all the other skills that you bring to the table that are going to make you phenomenal at this role and job. And I pursued it, and I'm so happy I did, because that pursuit built my confidence. It's I think a roadblock a lot of times is just fear. Fear to fail. And what I would say to everyone is that failure leads to success. I have failed multiple times. I continue to fail. In every role I have, there will be a failure that I experience, and they will be a lesson learned. So lean in, be authentic, find that community support, internal and external. And if you're uncomfortable with that closeness, look for it in networks and other groups that you could still have someone to lean in on, and ask questions to help build that confidence, because a lot of it for me was just lack of confidence. And a lot of that was due to not having examples of other women in my personal life that were in technology and in leadership roles that I could bounce ideas and thoughts of. So get the community together, lean in, and ask for help.
Awesome. That is so great. Stacy, with the rapid advancement of digital and scientific fields, and all of the skills that are needed to thrive and be successful in them, how can women who are early stage in their career future-proof themselves?
I love what Elsa was talking about, because future-proofing is more about the personal skills, the EQ that you have, being fierce, never get tenacity, never ever give up, even though we all fall down, picking yourself up, are actually more important than the technical skills. In fact, Amazon will hire people, for instance, that have Microsoft skills but no Amazon skills, technical skills, because we know that it's not the technical skills that actually make a successful person at Amazon. It's actually their leadership principles. And so, that being said, we do have to spend time in future-proofing and continuous learning. Technical certification, certificates from universities are the thing, right? My friend was a director of engineering at Lockheed Martin, and she got 3 master's degrees, 3 different technical master's degrees. Those days are over. Now get 4 or 5 different certificates from organizations that can drive you. Combine that with the shadowing that we previously discussed, that you are always broadening your role. And then the one that I would say that got me promoted the fastest was volunteering. Volunteering for things that were not within my specific role, but were thorny problems, improvement projects between organizations. So sales is struggling with delivery, or the technical team is struggling with getting that new product to market well. So helping to solve that, volunteering in places where you see the problems. This is actually one of the ways you get promoted at Amazon, is that we're looking for people that are doing their job and doing it very, very well, but have helped to create mechanisms that are improving the organization and showing their skills when they do so.
That's great. I mean, being able to grow your career by volunteering or building skill sets in areas that interest you, I think definitely will help propel other people, right, and get them inspired for that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Donna, a question for you. Can you tell us about a time where you practice self-advocacy on your specific journey as you've become a leader?
Well, starting at the beginning, when I thought I could ask for a job that I really didn't know how to do, that was number one. But along the way, I do recall I worked primarily in the Americas for the first part of my career. And I knew I wanted to do something more global in nature. So I saw an opportunity, or actually, I think I somewhat created an opportunity at my previous employer, where the job I was doing had the potential to have a more global reach if I brought on more of the alliances that I was currently working with in the Americas. And so I stuck my neck out. I created a deck. I had, an ally kind of help me, make sure that the deck was well focused and just sort of bounced ideas off that person. And then I went forward and pitched my idea. And it was just on my own, believing that there was a bigger role and a greater need, to be honest, for the company for me to take this, more broadly. And that is exactly what I did. They loved the idea, and they did give me that role moving forward. So it was something that I was passionate about. So that really helped. I knew what I was talking about and what was needed. And I knew my job at that time about what I was doing. So I just took it to the next level, which wasn't even a job, but there was a need. I saw a need and I was able to convey the need. So believing in yourself and being able to stand by what you know can be a possibility that perhaps others will share your vision was what happened for me in that case, and did help propel me forward in my career at that time.
That's awesome. I think that ties in really nicely again to what Stacey was talking about, being able to create that space where you see that gap. So very good to see that it actually is something that put into practice was successful for you. Darshana, is there something that you have learned along the way in your career that you wish you would have known a bit sooner?
Yeah, so one and only one thing there, right? And I talked about it earlier as well. And I can't stress enough on this, that if one could find their mentor and coach in whichever organization they're working, or even outside of the organization, I think that will just accelerate your career a lot, because otherwise you are at times thinking in one single direction. And many times we talk about this with our reporting managers, but I think that also will take you in one or two different directions. So finding that mentor in your network, and it's so easy these days with platforms like LinkedIn, and I wish something like that would have been there when I was struggling a little bit to find my way through. In terms of what's next for me, right? After doing 2-3 years, same role, the question always in my mind has been, what's next for me? I always wanted to change and get into a different role every 3 to 4 years. And I had a little bit of struggle at times on that. So I think reaching out proactively and not waiting for your organizations to come up with such mentorship programs, I think that is something, I wish I could have done early in my career.
Awesome. We have about 5 minutes left, ladies. So we do have a question that came in from one of the chats So I want to address it and leave it open. Also, I'll start with you and ask you to take a stab at answering this, but then would also like the rest of our panelists to answer this as well. The question is, and it's a multi-phase, so take whatever pieces you guys would like to see. When we are thinking about women and how they view themselves in their career, can you confirm or discuss a bit about some of that, what they're calling self-harm behavior that some female talented colleagues are showing by not considering themselves as good enough to apply for a job or for a promotion? That will obviously leave more space for their male counterparts who may not have the same level of experience that they do, that would eventually allow that male to get the job over a female who just doesn't have that confidence or feel like they're good enough. So Elsa, how do you think that that can be addressed, and what do you actually think the root cause is of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There could probably be a few different answers for the cause, because it could be situational. For me and my experience, I think it was just lack of examples and a lack of network. So I didn't have that in my personal life, and I lacked confidence in that space due to that. So I would go back to the earlier comments about community and help. It's fair. And I think that we talked about that a little bit. Males certainly feel this. I've had many conversations about this with my male counterparts, and they feel it, and they're worried that they may not be able to do the job, but they don't fear it as much as a female. And I think that's some of the characteristics that we tend to have. We're very detailed oriented. We want to get things done the right way, and that bleeds over into our careers at times. So I can't stress enough how important it is to surround yourselves with the right individuals, whether that's formal mentors, informal mentors in the workplace, outside of the workplace, to continuously help you build that confidence. And community is the only thing that will get you there. I think that's a tall hill to climb alone. If you're not hearing someone else kind of, empower you to go there and inspire you in different ways. Certainly, I would not have been capable if I didn't have champions behind me telling me you can do this. And then when I took the chance to do it, I proved to myself that I'm capable, and that capability and that strength that I found with that first time around has stayed with me. So be fearless, have a community, and you will get there. But it's a normal feeling. This is a normal feeling.
Yeah, to add to what Elsa said, right? The view we have of ourselves is not the view that your community had, correct, Elsa?
Right.
You viewed yourself not as powerful, perhaps, or as ready for that promotion or for that new job, but your community thought you were. So that's why the community is important. And then the other one is, all of us on this panel have discussed how we got jobs that we didn't feel we were qualified for because we were courageous. Courage is not the lack of fear, it's doing it anyway. Do the research, build your community, and if you really want it, do it anyway. We as women need to show that courage. I think we as women are the last people to ask. We don't ask. That's what all the research says. We just don't ask. We need to ask.
Be fearless in that ask. That's great. Thank you so much, Stacey and Elsa. Donna, I'll start with you on this one, then Darshan, I'd love for you to close it out. This is another question that came in from LinkedIn. And this particular person is looking for some tips for women who are returning to work after a career gap. So you've taken off to raise the kids, take care of aging parents, and now you're going back into the workforce. How do you, what are some tips that people can be ready with?
Well, that's pretty much my story. I had a huge gap. I didn't go back to work until I was in my very later 40s. And I really looked to my network of people in my world, not in my job. I didn't have a job, but to who I knew and what kind of advice they would give, and really just take a look at where your passion is. What are you good at? Start there. What are you good at? And how can you apply that in what it is you might like to do. As I noted, I was not thinking about technology. Other people thought about that for me. I never would have thought of technology. I was in television and then a little bit of marketing. So no, technology was not on my radar. It's been a wonderful career. I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed it. And it's not the technology itself, although I have been very fortunate to work for companies that had amazing technology. It was really about the job and the skill sets and the strength and the capabilities that I created for myself. I completely agree with what Elsa has said, and Stacy and Darshana as well. But also, when you said you used to look at job descriptions and want to check all the boxes, I was exactly the same way. I think so many women are like that. That's the first hurdle. So when you look at something and you say, "Oh, I've never done that before. I could do these 7 or 8 things, but that one and maybe not so much that one, I really haven't done that. So I wouldn't be a candidate probably for that role." So might the employer think. And that's in our heads, right? That's just what we think about ourselves. It's not what others say about us. So listen to what the women on the panel have said today. They're all really great tips about how you work with your networks, know what you're good at, and be fearless. Go out there and make yourself uncomfortable. It's what you have to do to move forward. And we all do it.
Awesome. Darshana, anything from you in our last 30 seconds before I close us out?
Yeah. So concluding thought from me is, end of the day, one has to find the purpose and passion, right? And we do it all the time in our life, and some point in time you find it, right? And that's where when you get into that job or that role or that workplace, you are in flow, right? You don't have to put extra efforts to do anything to do that job, and that's where I call it, you are in flow. I would suggest that if you are taking a career break, find that sweet spot for you. What are your strengths? What are your skills? And what are you good at? And something which you will do effortlessly at any place. And take baby steps. You don't need to, go into full-time job, and now we have a situation where one can work from home, which is a real plus point today. So take those baby steps, find your passion, find what you can do effortlessly, and start small. That is something which has worked for me as well. I have taken break in my career only once, when I was on my family way, and that was a real long break. 9 months to 1 year, and I started back immediately afterwards. And I think finding that purpose and passion to put you into the flow to do anything effortlessly is the key in my view.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, ladies. I feel like the time has flown by with us this morning. So really appreciate all of your insight, Donna, Elsa, Darshana, and Stacy. We really appreciate you guys joining. One quick note for our audience. Today, our 4-day coding challenge for our 100 finalists in our Engineering Equity Hackathon kicked off. And we are wishing all of those teams success as they innovate technical solutions to help us bridge that equity gap in tech. I also saw many comments for those seeking new opportunities in the industry. Please visit the career section of Virtusa.com or the LinkedIn jobs portal for any of the companies who joined us today to find open positions. As I think we heard resonating throughout the conversation today, building that network, don't be afraid to leverage your network to get into roles that maybe you don't feel like you're qualified for, but your network clearly may. So super excited for the journey that we're on as we're bridging that equity gap. And again, thank you so much to our panelists for joining us this morning. And we hope that you enjoyed this conversation today. Enjoy the rest of your International Women's Day. Thank you so much.